When a city goes through something as horrific as a terror attack, you always hear the same promise, right?
Yeah.
Lessons will be learned, security will be upgraded, it won't happen again.
Exactly.
So what does it mean when it does happen again years later and it follows almost the exact same playbook?
Well, that is the deeply disturbing question our source material really forces us to confront today. We're going to do a deep dive into two really devastating vehicle ramming attacks on German Christmas markets.
The first one in Berlin back in 2016, and the second, much more recently, in Magdeburg in 2024.
And our mission here is to analyze the facts. We're looking at police investigations, intelligence reports, security assessments, all to find the common thread that links these two events.
And what's so startling when you dig in is that the ideologies of the attackers were polar opposites. One was driven by, allegiance to Islamist terrorism.
And the other by an intense anti-Islam extremism.
But the outcome was identical. Mass casualties enabled by what the sources show to be systemic failure.
We're going to unpack the ignored warnings, the lapses in surveillance, the sheer operational incompetence that allowed these known threats to act. So we're asking you, the learner, to look closely with us. How did a security system that's supposed to be built for vigilance fail so catastrophically, not once, but twice?
Okay, let's start with the one that should have been the final wake-up call for Germany. For all of Europe, really.
Berlin.
December 19, 2016. A heavy truck. It just barrels into the crowded Christmas market at Breitscheidplatz.
The final toll was 14 people killed and 56 injured. It is, to this day, Germany's worst Islamist terrorist attack by casualty count.
And the man behind the wheel.
His name was Amri. He was a 24-year-old Tunisian who'd come into Germany from Italy in 2015 as an asylum seeker. An unsuccessful one, I should add.
The sources paint this picture of a man who was already on the radar. He hijacked this massive truck, first killing the original Polish driver, Łukasz Urban.
Right, who was found stabbed and shot in the passenger seat. Then Amri just used this huge vehicle as a weapon against crowds of people.
And it's a terrifying detail. But the only thing that stopped the truck was its own automatic braking system.
Yeah, if that hadn't kicked in, the casualties could have been even higher.
But the real failure, it starts way before he even got to that market. Amri wasn't some kind of ghost. He was a known, documented threat.
Oh, absolutely. The sources are crystal clear on this. He was on a watch list for terrorist links going back to January of 2016. He was known to be in contact with radicals.
So what went wrong? Why was he free to act?
Well, this is the critical point. The authorities started covert surveillance on him, but then they discontinued it.
They just stopped.
After only 6 months. The official reason they gave was that they found nothing to substantiate an initial tip-off.
Wait, nothing? Even though Morocco reportedly warned German authorities about this exact guy.
It seems so. It seems like a bureaucratic decision. Meanwhile, he was operating with at least 6 different names under 3 different nationalities. He was, completely exploiting the complexity of the system.
And then after the attack, which is maybe even more galling, he just flees the country. He uses the Schengen zone, Europe's passport-free travel area, to just escape.
He traveled through the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. A man who had just committed mass murder, moving freely across open borders. He was eventually stopped, but not until 4 days later in Milan, Italy.
That freedom of movement for Europe's most wanted man, it just exposed this huge systemic fragility. The lesson from Berlin was screamingly obvious.
You would think. Fix the tracking of known threats, especially those exploiting the migration system, and yet you fast forward 8 years.
And we're in Magdeburg, December 20, 2024. And despite all the promises, all the supposed security upgrades, it happens again.
A vehicle rams into another holiday market. This time 6 people are killed, including a 9-year-old boy, Andre Gleisner, and the injury count. It was staggering. 309 people.
And this is where the ideological contrast just becomes so critical to the analysis. The attacker this time was Taleb al-Abdul-Mohsen,
a 50-year-old doctor, a psychiatrist from Saudi Arabia. And like Amri, he had been granted residence in Germany in 2016. But unlike Amri, German authorities had identified Abdul-Mohsen as, and this is their term, evidently Islamophobic.
So if Amri's motive was extremist allegiance to Islam, Abdul-Mohsen's was this profound hatred of Islam. He was trying to punish Germany for what he saw as its tolerance of Islamists.
It just flips the whole narrative on his head.
It completely does, and it shows that the pattern of failure, it transcends any one ideology. This guy wasn't working for ISIS. He was posting social media content supporting figures associated with the far right. He saw himself as a victim, and he wanted to punish the whole German nation.
But again, regardless of his radical mindset, the sources reveal this just, shocking inability to act on specific, detailed warnings. It mirrors the Amri case, but maybe it's even worse.
I'd say it's much worse. The documentation is just extraordinary. He had a prior sentence for threatening criminal offenses from way back in 2013.
Okay, so a history of threats. A very recent history, too. In 2023, the BND, that's Germany's foreign intelligence agency, they got a report from Saudi Arabia. It warned that Abdul Mohsen had announced he was planning something big in Germany.
Something big. That's not subtle.
It gets more specific. In September 2023, a Saudi woman who knew him, she went to the police. She tried to warn them that Abdul Mohsen wanted to kill 20 Germans.
20 Germans. That's not an unspecific threat. That is an actionable piece of intelligence.
You'd think so. But what did the German authorities do? They looked into it, but ultimately decided the threats were too unspecific or that there was no concrete danger.
They dismissed it. They dismissed a direct documented warning.
And we know exactly what he was thinking right before the attack. He posted videos online accusing the German state of running a covert secret operation. And then minutes before he drove into that crowd, he posted, and I'm quoting here, "I hold the German nation, I hold the German citizens responsible for what is in store for me."
It wasn't a stealth attack. It was a publicly announced threat that the system just failed to connect the dots on.
So you have the 2016 failure where surveillance was dropped and the 2024 failure where specific warnings were dismissed. The end result, tragically, is the same.
Which brings us to this final, just devastating layer of failure. The physical defenses on the ground. Magdeburg was supposed to be prepared after Berlin.
Of course. I mean, this tactic isn't new. A 2017 report from the EU's Joint Research Center noted a steady increase in casualties from these kinds of attacks. The playbook on how to stop them exists.
Right. Things like bollards, planters, what they call security by design.
Exactly. You integrate vehicle restriction measures into the urban design itself. And Magdeburg did some of that. They put up large concrete and steel roadblocks around the market. On paper, it looked like they'd done their homework.
But it wasn't enough.
No, because the failure was so simple and so fatal. The sources say the organizers intentionally left one access road completely open.
Why? Why would they do that?
For emergency services. So ambulances or fire trucks could get in quickly if there was, a fire or a medical emergency.
So the access point designed to save lives became the path for taking them.
Precisely. Abdul Mohsen just drove straight through this unprotected gap, bypassing every single one of those expensive barriers.
Wow.
It confirms what security experts said after the attack. One analysis we looked at concluded that if even one access road is left unprotected, then, quote, all the other concrete bollards are useless.
The system failed at its absolute weakest link, a basic operational flaw.
It's incredible. After 2016, the German government proposed all these anti-terror reforms, more surveillance, electronic tags, easier deportations. The solutions were known, but the system was just too slow or too poorly executed to make a difference.
So when you look at all of this, the pattern is it's undeniable.
It is. In 2016, you have an intelligence system that's too cumbersome to keep tabs on a known Islamist radical. In 2024, you have a system that's too quick to dismiss documented warnings about a radicalized anti-Islam extremist.
And in both cases, the physical security, the last line of defense, was rendered totally useless by simple, avoidable errors. The human cost is just staggering. 14 people in Berlin, 6 in Magdeburg, including a child. It's a direct result of these process failures.
And for you, the learner, the key takeaway here is that the debates that always happen after these attacks, they focus on big ideas like migration or extremism, and those are important.
But they often miss the real point.
Right. They obscure the real failure point, which is an execution shortfall. The threats were known, the guidance for defense was established, but the system just failed to implement the solutions effectively.
So where does that leave us? I mean, this pattern forces a really uncomfortable, provocative question.
It does.
Should Germany and maybe the wider EU accept that if they prioritize the, open and accessible feeling of public spaces over implementing robust mandatory security at every single entry point, does that just mean that citizens have to accept a higher predictable risk of this happening again every holiday season? It makes you wonder if security needs to become permanently mandatory, even if it compromises convenience in the way a city looks.